My name is Fraser.
My name is Mark.
And we are the hosts of the geekiest show alive. To the outside world, we're ordinary geeks.
But in the Fab International Studios, we talk comics and find other geeks just like us. This is Geek of the Week.
So, a lot of comics compared going here.
Comics compared.
Quick comic compared. So we're going to talk about Riverdale. This is the one we had planned. So the show producers, Mark's going to be here for this one. He is buzzing for it, I can see.
Oh, yeah.
So the show producers of Riverdale described the show as Archie Comics meets Twin Peaks.
I like Twin Peaks.
There you go. So you might like this show,
I've not watched it.
Especially the first season. And the way they sort of described it is they both look... If you think of those two, they both look at the idea of Americana. You know, sort of that like, oh, home apple pie, oh, I love my coffee me, and we're in suburbia and everything's great. But the Archie Comics was like, no, Americana's amazing, it's great. Twin Peaks was sort of like, did a social commentary on it and was just like, actually, if you look behind the curtain, there's kind of some dark stuff in suburbia. And that's basically what Riverdale does. It looks behind that. So their first season heavily alluded to like incest between the two Blossom twins. By the way, spoilers ahead. There's usually a big plan for this. I usually say spoilers ahead before I kick off. But here you go, spoilers ahead. So, there's... In the first season, one of the Blossom twins is dead, and that's a big thing. It's like, who killed Jason Blossom? And it's heavily... There's loads of stuff like the relationship between Cheryl and Jason. There's a heavy, like, incest sort of thing going there. They sort of suggest that the relationship's a bit too weird. Yeah, exactly. So... And that is touched upon in the afterlife with Archie. Like, they sort of... Well, it's not touched upon. They say... they're incestuous, and that's sort of like the scary horror thing. But again, more to go with that is in season one, the Blossoms, it turns out they killed the Blossoms, who were this big successful family, had this business in maple syrup, which is the most Americana you can think of, right? But that's just a front for this big drug thing. Like, literally behind closed doors is this drug business they collecting, and it shames the whole family. So it is sort of that commentary on like, suburbia is not all you think it is, which I think is really cool. And the second season did something really cool. So the main villain of the second and sort of third season now is Hiram Lodge, who's this big business guy who's come over from the big city. He was at Riverdale for a bit when he was younger, but he's basically trying to buy out suburbia. He's like buying Pops, the big burger place, again, Americana, what can you think? He buys the drive-in and stuff like this, and all these ideas that you think of suburbia, and he buys them out, and he's literally the physical embodiment of businesses taking over suburbia. And his sort of reverse, who represents suburbia, is Archie, and they sort of butt heads, and unfortunately it doesn't work out for Archie. So you could sort of say it's like their commentary saying that business will always win over suburbia. Like, you get a Starbucks in a local town, it's going to ruin, small businesses.
You say that because it's a modern show. It's made like a year ago.
Yeah.
And Archie is very much steeped in Americana and old school history, isn't it? Like about 50 years old, the original Archie comics. So
yeah, it's from the 60s.
I like that they've acknowledged that their original concept is outdated and they're playing with it, and it sounds like Twin Peaks.
Yeah, it really is.
Kind of vibe is a good thing,
and it's really good as well.
Because I've not seen any of this at all.
What they've done is as well, they've rebooted the comic sort of, so they've given like modern writers a go on it. So Mark Waid is on it. He did a load for Captain America.
Okay,
and
cool.
Chris, I always call him Chris. Chip Zdarsky. He's Chip Zdarsky, but I always call him Chip Skylark. From Fairly Odd Parents. Chips. You might not. It might have gone over your head. But if you're listening, I always think of Chip Skylark. He's not. It's Chip Zdarsky, but I always say Chip Skylark. I've just got to point that out there, because if I ever talk about him and I say Chip Skylark, hopefully viewers will know I mean him. But they doing like, listeners. There you go. All right, I'm told. They have reintroduced these characters. Like, there's an Archie line. Betty and Veronica have got their own. Jughead's got one, and they are they're not this dark take on it. It's just sort of more modern. Like, Archie's got like a mobile phone and stuff like that. It's still cheesy suburbia. There's still the love triangle between Archie, Betty, and Veronica, which isn't present in the show. Like, in the show, they put Betty with... Well, it is present, sort of. Like, they're sort of alluding that Betty still wants Archie now, but Betty is with Jughead. which I always found interesting and kind of annoying at first when I was watching the show, because in recent storylines with Chip Zdarsky's story, they actually revealed that Jughead is ace in this universe. Like, it's literally...
Ace being short for asexual.
Yeah. Literally, they just throw it out there. Like, he's literally walking along with, I think, Kevin, who's like the gay character, and he's like... He just talks about, like, oh, yeah, I'm not really interested in guys or girls. I mean... And he actually goes, look at Archie over there. He can't even tie his own shoelace because he's too busy thinking about Betty or Veronica. That's me paraphrasing. It is something like that. But it was just such a throwaway line, and I think it's kind of a big deal for those kind of comics. It's just been like, yeah, he's an asexual, he doesn't really care. And then the show sort of just been like, no, we're going to pair these off because that's what teens like. Teens like people being together. And I'm like, if they actually go down the ace line, it's not going to work out too well for Betty. She's already had her heart broken by Archie, so that's a sort of like interesting take. Sort of, they do have those. They have took stuff from the modern comics though as well and introduced it. But a big influence is what we've been talking about all day, buddy. Is the horror line, Archie horror, which again started with Afterlife Archie and then went into Sabrina. You know, so in season 1, the Sweetwater River was sort of where Jason was dead, and there was loads of horror stuff insinuated there. In season 2, there's a mention of Greendale, where Sabrina's from. The song on like the first episode is Season of the Witch, so there was theories that Sabrina was going to cross over. And season 3 so far has had floating babies and a gargoyle king who looks very similar to a character that's in Sabrina.
Right.
So I think the hope is there. That, yeah, they're taking inspiration from their horror line and maybe they'll do horror spin-offs. But I feel like the hope is that Sabrina and Riverdale will cross over if both do well. I would love to see a crossover between the two, I'm not going to lie. Because Sabrina, because she's a witch, she doesn't age. So she can be with her friends now in The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. Now that can take place whenever. I'm not actually sure where it takes place. And then she can pop into Riverdale, which I think is just amazing. But to sort of summarise and bring it all together... and to sort of make it more comics compared, because I feel like I might not have done that too well. But please, if you're listening, let me know if you feel like it's up to par with the other comics compared, even though there's only been 2. I feel like this show is a mix of all of the Archie comics. So you've got the base from the original 60s, you've got the new modern characters from the modern line, but they've also incorporated that horror to sort of mix it all together, and then they've just thrown in like a spice of Twin Peaks, stirred it all together and made a show that's like uniquely its own. Like, it's not too reliant on the source material. It's sort of like, you know what, we can pick from, we've got these 3 great things to do, why not pick bits and pieces and see what we can make out of this? And for me anyway, I really enjoy the show. It can be cheesy, but that's it. So I'm going to try and remember this line. Actually, I might have written it down. So we've talked about a load of different comics in this comparison, all of which we both, now that I've convinced I've turned him into an Archie fan, we recommend checking out, especially if you enjoy the show. And as always with adaptations, there's going to be similarities, differences, and comparisons. Please let me know what you guys think about me doing it live, because if it was awful and you're like, no, go back to pre-records, I'll totally do that. But if you dug this, it means a little less work, but it also means that there's a lot more pressure when I'm on live.
Yeah, Fraser was super nervous, but
So listen to Geek of the Week. Be sure to tune in next week. Same geek time, same geek channel.
And if you want to follow us on social media, it's at GOTW Radio on Twitter. Search for Geek of the Week Radio Show on Facebook. And to listen again, it's www.mixcloud.com/Geek of the Week Radio Show.